The great chamber of the Galactic Council stood silent. 200 species had gathered, their representatives floating, sitting, or standing according to their biology. High Arbiter Zixtal clicked his mandibles together, a sign of deep concern among his insectoid people. Before him lay scattered data crystals, archaeological reports, and star charts that all pointed to one impossible conclusion. An entire civilization had vanished. The Velkari Empire, which had dominated the eastern spiral arm for over 40,000 years, no longer existed. Not defeated, not conquered, not scattered across the stars, simply gone. Every world they had claimed, every station they had built, every ship they had flown, all destroyed or abandoned. In the span of less than 2 years, 890 billion souls had disappeared from the galaxy. The evidence is clear, Zixtal announced, his translator converting his chittering into words every species could understand. The Velkari extinction event occurred exactly 50 standard years ago. It coincides with what we have termed humanity's silent century. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Thal delegation, tall beings of pure energy contained in crystalline shells, pulsed with anxious light. The Morgathi, resembling nothing so much as floating jellyfish, darkened their bioluminescent patterns. Everyone remembered the silent century. One day humanity had simply withdrawn every ambassador, closed every border, and ceased all communication. For 127 years now, humans had remained behind their boundaries, speaking to no one, explaining nothing. We have discovered something else, Zixtal continued. He activated a holographic display. Images of ruined worlds appeared, rotating slowly. Planets reduced to molten slag, space stations torn apart with precision. Cities that had stood for millennia now nothing but radiation-soaked craters. The destruction pattern is methodical, systematic. This was not natural disaster. This was war. But who could accomplish such a thing? Asked Representative Quilm, speaking for the aquatic Bentar. The Velkari were a Tier 2 civilization. They possessed dimensional weapons, reality anchors, temporal shields. They were untouchable. Were, Zixtal emphasized. Past tense. Something touched them. Something erased them so completely that we found no survivors, no refugees, no remnant populations hiding in forgotten systems. We have searched for 5 decades. The Velkari are extinct. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species suggested a plague, others a cosmic catastrophe. The Yithrak representative, a being of living metal, proposed that perhaps the Velkari had ascended to a higher plane of existence. Each theory seemed more desperate than the last. Zixtal waited for silence, then spoke the words that made every being present grow cold. We have confirmed that human fleet movements match exactly with Velkari system destructions. Each location, each date, perfect correlation. Impossible, breathed Quilm. Humanity was barely a century into spaceflight when this occurred. They were newcomers, peaceful explorers. They had no military to speak of. They did not, Zixtal agreed, and then suddenly they did. The transformation took 30 days. After that, the Velkari began dying. The council had debated for months whether to invite a human representative to testify. Humanity had ignored every previous summons, every attempt at communication. But this investigation had uncovered evidence too significant to ignore, and finally, after 50 years of silence, humanity had responded. They would send one ambassador. They would answer questions. But they had included a warning that chilled even the most hardened council members. You will not like what you learn. Some truths are better left buried. But if you insist on digging up the past, we will show you exactly what happened and why it can never happen again. The chamber doors opened with a pneumatic hiss that seemed too loud in the sudden silence. Every eye, stalk, sensor, and optical organ turned to watch as a human entered. Ambassador Chen Wei walked slowly, using a carved wooden cane despite humanity's mastery of age reversal technology. She was old, deliberately so, and the lines on her face spoke of sorrows that medicine could not erase. Her hair had gone completely white. Her eyes held a haunted quality that made even the most alien beings recognize deep trauma. She made her way to the central platform and stood before 200 species, a lone human facing the judgment of the galaxy. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, forcing everyone to lean forward, to focus, to hear every word. You want to know what happened to the Velkari, she said. It was not a question. You want to understand why they are gone and why humanity spent 127 years in isolation. You want answers? We do. Sixtal confirmed. The Council has a right to understand. The Velkari were a recognized civilization. Their extinction represents the greatest loss of life in recorded history. If humanity was responsible, if. Chen Wei's laugh was bitter and sharp. There is no if, High Arbiter. We were responsible. Completely, utterly. We hunted them across 200 systems. We destroyed every colony, every outpost, every ship. When they ran, we followed. When they hid, we found them. When they begged for mercy, we gave them exactly what they gave us, nothing. The chamber fell into shocked silence. Several species began speaking at once, their translators creating a cacophony of outrage, confusion, and fear. Chen Wei simply stood, waiting, her expression never changing. Sixtal raised his forearms, calling for order. Ambassador Chen, you understand what you are admitting? You confess to genocide? I confess to nothing, she replied coldly. Confession implies regret. I am simply stating facts. You asked what happened. I am telling you. But to understand what we did, you need to understand why. You need to know what brought a peaceful species to commit such acts. And for that, we must go back. Back to when humanity first reached for the stars. Back to when we believed the galaxy was a place of wonder and cooperation. Back to before we learned the truth. She tapped her cane against the floor and a holographic display activated, showing images of Earth as it had been 150 years ago. Blue and green, peaceful and beautiful, orbited by construction stations where the first-generation ships were being built. This is where it begins, Chen Wei said softly. With hope. With dreams. With humans who believed that among the stars we would find friends and allies. We were so young then, so naive. We thought that advanced civilizations would be better than us. More moral, more just. Her expression hardened, and her next words carried such weight that they seemed to press down on everyone present. We were wrong, and the species that taught us how wrong we were, the species that showed us the true face of the galaxy, they paid for that lesson with their existence. You want to know what happened to the Velkari? Then listen closely, and learn why humanity will never be that naive again. Learn why we are content to stand alone in the darkness, trusted by no one, rather than trust a galaxy that looks away when innocents suffer. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the chamber, meeting the eyes of every representative who dared look at her. This is the story of how humanity died and was reborn as something else, something you now fear. And you should fear us because what we did to the Velkari, we would do again to any species that pushes us that far. Remember that as you listen. Remember that every atrocity I described could happen to you if you make the same mistakes they did. The High Arbiter's mandibles clicked nervously. Begin, Ambassador. Tell us everything. Chen Wei nodded slowly, her eyes distant, seeing events from long ago. It started with first contact, she said. It started with joy. The holographic display shifted, showing images of early human colony ships emerging from faster-than-light travel for the first time. Chen Wei's voice softened, remembering a time when things were different. We came to the stars with open hands, she began. Our first colony ship, the New Horizons, made contact with the Thal Collective in the year 2147. Do you remember, representatives? How excited we were, how much we wanted to learn from you. The Thal delegation pulsed with acknowledgement. They remembered. Humanity had been so eager, so friendly, like children discovering a vast playground. Within 5 years, we had established diplomatic relations with 47 species. We traded art, music, literature. We shared our history, our culture, our dreams. We built colonies on 12 worlds. We thought we had found paradise. Chen Wei's expression hardened. And then we met the Velkari. The display changed, showing towering beings with 6 arms, skin like polished obsidian, and eyes that glowed with inner fire. The Velkari had been magnificent in their prime, beautiful and terrible. Their cities had stretched across continents. Their ships had been works of art, and their technology had been envied by half the galaxy. The Velkari Empire controlled 847 systems in the eastern spiral arm. They were ancient, powerful, and utterly convinced of their superiority. They had a practice they called cultural harvesting. Chen Wei spat the words like poison. A pleasant name for something monstrous. She activated another image. It showed Velkari ships descending on primitive worlds, their holds filled with cages. They would identify younger species, those who had achieved spaceflight but were not yet advanced enough to defend themselves. They would raid colonies and settlements, taking individuals by the thousands. These captives were used for genetic experiments, forced labor, and entertainment. Entertainment, Quilm whispered, horror evident even through the translator. Yes, Chen Wei confirmed. The Velkari wealthy would purchase exotic aliens for their private collections. They would force them to perform, to fight, to breed. Some were dissected alive to satisfy scientific curiosity. Others were simply displayed like animals in a zoo. The Velkari saw nothing wrong with this. To them, younger species were resources, not people. Zixtal shifted uncomfortably. The council was aware of this practice. The Velkari claimed it was their ancient right, part of their cultural heritage. We debated intervention multiple times, but they were too powerful, Chen Wei interrupted. Too important to the galactic economy. Too dangerous to oppose. So the council did nothing. Species after species petitioned for help. The Yomal lost 200,000 of their people. The Drex lost 500,000. The Kelthar lost entire colony worlds. And the council did nothing. We imposed sanctions, Zixtal protested weakly. We registered formal complaints. You did nothing, Chen Wei repeated, her voice flat and cold. Words are not actions. Complaints are not justice. Sanctions that are never enforced are just more words. The Velkari continued their harvesting, and the galaxy looked away because confronting them was uncomfortable. She let that accusation hang in the air before continuing. Humanity discovered this practice in our 8th year among the stars. We were horrified. We brought the matter before this very council. We presented evidence. We showed recordings of Velkari raids. We demanded action. The council debated for 3 years, Zixtal said quietly. While you debated, the Velkari kept hunting, and eventually they turned their attention to us. Human genetics fascinated them. Our adaptability, our emotional range, our capacity for learning, these things made us valuable. The Velkari decided that humans would make excellent additions to their collections. The holographic display showed a beautiful world, blue oceans and green continents, orbital stations glinting in the sunlight. New Providence, our 6th colony, population 2.3 million. Established in 2159, it was a farming world, peaceful and productive. Most of the colonists were families, children, elderly couples seeking a quiet retirement, artists and musicians who wanted space to create. It was paradise. Chen Wei's voice cracked slightly. I had a sister there, Maya. She was a teacher. Her husband was a botanist. They had 2 children, ages 7 and 9. My niece wanted to be a dancer. My nephew collected rocks and could name every mineral by sight. The display changed, showing orbital footage of massive ships appearing in New Providence's sky. Velkari warships, bristling with weapons, beautiful and terrifying. They came without warning. 67 ships. They disabled our orbital defenses in minutes. We had so few, and they were meant for asteroid deflection, not military action. Then they landed ground forces. They went city to city, town to town, farm to farm. They used stun weapons, nothing lethal. They wanted us alive. Images showed humans being herded into transport ships, families torn apart, children screaming for parents, the elderly trampled in the panic. 50,000 faces frozen in terror. They took 50,000 people in 6 hours. My sister, her family, all gone. The Velkari broadcast the raid across their networks. They were proud of their efficiency. We intercepted those broadcasts. We watched our people being loaded into cages. We heard them screaming. Chen Wei's hands trembled on her cane. The Velkari left a message for humanity. They said we should be honored. Our people would contribute to Velkari science and culture. They said if we remained peaceful, they might return the survivors in a few decades. Maybe. The council convened emergency sessions, Zixtal offered. We discussed sanctions, blockades. You discussed, Chen Wei said bitterly. You debated. You wrote strongly worded letters. Meanwhile, we received transmissions from our people in Velkari captivity. Genetic testing, painful experiments, public displays where humans were forced to fight each other for entertainment. A 7-year-old girl, my niece, was sold to a private collector. We tracked her for 3 months before the transmission stopped. We never learned what happened to her. The holographic images showed the Galactic Council chambers from 150 years ago, filled with the same species, the same delegations. Young Chen Wei stood at the podium, her face wet with tears, her voice hoarse from pleading. I begged you, she said, pointing at her younger self. I showed you what they did. I brought testimonies from the few who escaped. I asked for a joint military response. Do you remember what you told me? Silence filled the chamber. You said it was complicated, that the Velkari were a sovereign nation, that interfering might destabilize the region, that humanity should pursue diplomatic channels, that these things take time. Chen Wei's voice rose. Time, our people were dying, and you asked us to wait. She took a breath, steadying herself. So we waited. We filed formal complaints. We requested mediation. We offered to pay ransoms. The Velkari ignored everything. And then, 6 months after the raid, they broadcast a special program. They called it Human Week. It was a showcase of their newest acquisitions. The display showed brief clips, humans in cages, humans being examined by Velkari scientists, humans forced to perform tricks for crowds. Chen Wei's face remained expressionless as the images played, but tears ran silently down her cheeks. They showed my nephew being dissected. They showed it live across Velkari space. They showed it to teach their children about inferior species anatomy. He was 9 years old and they cut him open while he was conscious because they wanted to observe his stress responses. His name was David. He liked rocks. No one in the council chamber spoke. No one moved. That broadcast ended humanity's faith in diplomacy, Chen Wei said quietly. We realized that the galaxy did not care. That justice would not come from above. That if we wanted our people back, if we wanted the Velkari to stop, we would have to act ourselves. So we issued an ultimatum. The display showed a transmission, humanity's final diplomatic message to the Velkari Empire. Return all human captives immediately. Cease all harvesting operations. Submit to war crimes tribunals. You have 30 days. If you refuse, there will be consequences. The Velkari response came within hours, Chen Wei said. They laughed. They broadcast their laughter across the galaxy. And then they did something that sealed their fate. They took 10 human captives and executed them slowly, broadcasting the deaths as a message to humanity. They said we were amusing. They said we should send more humans. Our spirit made us entertaining. Chen Wei looked around the chamber, meeting every gaze. That was their mistake. Not the harvesting. Not the torture. Not even the murders. Their mistake was thinking that because we valued life, we would not take it. Their mistake was confusing mercy with weakness. Their mistake was believing that a peaceful species would remain peaceful forever. She tapped her cane against the floor. The 30 days passed. The Velkari did nothing. They thought we were bluffing. They were wrong. On day 31, humanity showed the galaxy what happens when you push a peaceful species too far. On day 31, we stopped being explorers and became something else. Something necessary. Something terrible. On day 31, she continued, her voice dropping to barely a whisper, we became executioners, and the Velkari became extinct. The holographic display showed Earth as it had been during those 30 days. To the casual observer, nothing seemed wrong. Ships continued their routes. Colonies maintained normal communications. Trade continued. But something fundamental had changed. Something that only became clear later when people looked back and truly paid attention to the details. Chen Wei gestured to the images. During those 30 days, while we waited for the Velkari to respond to our ultimatum, humanity transformed. We did not announce it. We did not ask permission. We simply acted. The display zoomed in on Luna, Earth's moon. Construction facilities that had been building civilian transports suddenly shifted production. Within days, shipyards that had taken years to build peaceful vessels began producing something new. The designs were crude, simple, but effective. Warships, thousands of them. Every human colony received the same directive, Chen Wei explained. Every resource toward defense. Every factory retooled. Every civilian vessel converted. We had 12 colony worlds and 47 space stations. In 30 days, all of them became military production centers. She changed the image to show Mars, where massive underground facilities were being excavated at impossible speed. We worked without sleep. Humans took stimulants to stay awake for days at a time. We pushed ourselves past healthy limits, past safe limits. 17,000 people died from overwork in those 30 days. We buried them and kept building, Zixtal leaned forward. But the technology. You were decades away from possessing weapons that could challenge the Velkari. Their shields alone were designed to stop sophisticated attacks, Chen Wei interrupted. The Velkari expected complex weapons, dimensional warfare, reality manipulation. They expected opponents who would fight like them. We gave them something else. Something crude. Something they did not anticipate. The display showed human weapons. They were simple things. Kinetic accelerators, nuclear warheads, chemical explosives. Nothing fancy. Nothing elegant. But they existed in staggering numbers. We built 50,000 ships in 30 days. They were not good ships by galactic standards. They had no AI, no dimensional drives, no temporal shields. Many would barely survive a single engagement. But they could carry weapons, and they could be piloted by humans willing to die. That was enough. She showed images of Earth's population centers, empty streets, abandoned cities. Every human between 18 and 60 was conscripted. Every single one. The elderly and children maintained essential services. Everyone else trained for combat. 12 billion humans became soldiers in 1 month. We did not ask them. We told them. And they agreed because every human knew someone who had been taken. Every human had seen the broadcasts. Every human understood what was at stake. The display showed training facilities operating around the clock. Humans learning to fight, to pilot, to kill. Young faces hardened by weeks of intensive preparation. We designed our tactics around one simple truth. Humans are abundant and we reproduce quickly. We could afford losses the Valkyrie could not. We could throw 100 lives at a target if it meant succeeding. They could not match that. Their birth rate was too low, their population too precious to risk. Chen Wei's voice remained steady, clinical, as if describing someone else's actions. We knew we would lose millions. We accepted it. Every pilot who climbed into those crude ships knew they were likely flying to their death. They went anyway. That is what the Valkyrie did not understand about humanity. We can become our own worst nightmare when necessary. The images shifted to show the Valkyrie Empire during those same 30 days. Their broadcasts showed amusement. Their leaders gave interviews discussing humanity's foolish ultimatum. They increased security at a few border stations but otherwise changed nothing. Why would they? Humanity was insignificant, a minor irritation at best. They kept our people in cages, Chen Wei said quietly. They kept broadcasting programs featuring human captives. They were so confident, so certain that we would back down. On day 29, they executed another 5 humans and sent us the recording. They thought it would make us afraid. Instead, it eliminated the last voices calling for restraint. She showed the Galactic Council chambers during that month. Emergency sessions were called. Species debated what humanity might do. Some suggested military intervention to stop humanity from doing something rash. Others argued for continued diplomatic approaches. The session stretched on, filled with speeches and procedural debates. You talked, Chen Wei said, a bitter smile on her face. While we built weapons, you talked. While we trained armies, you wrote resolutions. On day 30, this council voted to establish a committee to investigate the situation and recommend a course of action within 6 months. 6 months. The Valkyrie would have harvested another dozen species by then. The display showed humanity's response. Every ambassador was withdrawn. Every diplomatic channel closed. Every human ship returned to human space. The borders sealed completely. We gave you 30 days to act, Chen Wei said. You did nothing. So we stopped waiting for permission. We stopped believing in galactic justice. We went silent because we no longer had anything to say to a galaxy that would watch children be tortured and debate proper procedures. The images showed the final hours. Human fleets gathering at designated points. Millions of soldiers saying goodbye to families they would never see again. Messages recorded for children not yet born. If you are watching this, it means I did not come home. Remember that I loved you. Remember that some things are worth dying for. We knew our casualties would be catastrophic, Chen Wei continued. Our military analysts estimated we would lose 60% of our forces. We considered that acceptable. The Valkyrie population was 890 billion spread across 847 systems. We had only 12 billion humans, but every single one was willing to fight. They had numbers. We had rage. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the chamber. That is what the Valkyrie never understood. They thought we valued individual life too much to wage total war. They were right that we valued life, but they forgot that sometimes the only way to protect life is to take it. They forgot that humans have always been willing to die for causes we believe in. They forgot that we are at our core survivors, and survivors do whatever is necessary. The display showed countdown timers appearing on every human vessel. 10 seconds. 9. 8. The crews sat ready, their hands steady on controls, their faces calm. These were people who had accepted their deaths and made peace with it. On day 31, at exactly 600 Galactic Standard Time, our fleets jumped to faster than light travel. We did not send a warning. We did not make demands. We simply appeared in 200 Valkyrie systems simultaneously. The images showed what happened next. Human ships emerging from FTL, crude and ugly compared to the elegant Valkyrie vessels, but appearing in swarms so vast they blotted out stars. 50,000 ships divided across 200 targets, attacking with no mercy and no hesitation. The Valkyrie were not prepared. Why would they be? We were insects to them, annoying but harmless. Their defense fleets were sized for police actions, not full-scale war. They had grown comfortable over millennia of dominance. That comfort killed them. Chen Wei showed brief clips of battles. Human ships taking terrible losses but pressing forward. Valkyrie stations exploding. Orbital platforms falling from the sky. We used our weakness as a weapon. Our ships were too simple for their advanced targeting systems to prioritize correctly. We attacked in such numbers that their shields overloaded. We threw nuclear weapons, crude, ancient technology, at targets the Valkyrie had long ago forgotten how to defend against. The display showed a Valkyrie commander's face, frozen in shock as dozens of human vessels rammed his flagship, despite being torn apart by defensive fire. The ship exploded and the humans died, but the Valkyrie flagship died with them. We lost 8,000 ships in the first 6 hours, Chen Wei said calmly. 16% of our fleet gone, but we had achieved our objectives. We had secured orbital superiority in 47 systems. We had destroyed military infrastructure in another 100. And we had sent a message that the galaxy could no longer ignore. Humanity was no longer asking for justice. We were delivering it ourselves. She changed the display to show Valkyrie broadcasts from that day. The amusement was gone. Replaced by fear, by confusion, by the dawning realization that something terrible had been unleashed. They tried to communicate. They sent messages offering to negotiate, to return our people, to cease all harvesting operations. Do you know what we said? Chen Wei looked around the chamber. We said nothing. We did not acknowledge their messages. We did not accept their surrender. We simply continued attacking. Because by then it was not about rescuing our people. It was about ensuring this could never happen again. The display showed human ground forces landing on Valkyrie worlds. Not to conquer, to destroy. We gave Valkyrie civilians 1 hour to evacuate each military target. Then we destroyed it completely. If they did not evacuate, we destroyed it anyway. We were not monsters, we gave them chances to live. But we were not merciful either. Every military installation, every research facility, every ship construction yard, all of it burned. Chen Wei showed footage of Valkyrie refugees fleeing their own worlds. The holographic display shifted to show star maps of Valkyrie space. Red markers indicated destroyed installations. Green markers showed active human fleet positions. With each passing day in the recording, more red appeared until the map seemed to bleed. Chen Wei watched the display with distant eyes. The first month was strategy. The second month was when we became something else entirely. Something we had never been before. The images showed human forces digging in on captured worlds, not occupying, preparing. Building logistics networks, supply chains, construction facilities. We were not conquering the Valkyrie Empire. We were dismantling it, piece by piece, system by system, and we were making sure it could never return. She brought up casualty reports. The numbers climbed steadily. Human losses by week 2, 124,000 dead. Week 3, 340,000 dead. Week 4, 890,000 dead. We paid for every system in blood, but the Valkyrie were paying more. For every human who died, we killed 10 of them. For every ship we lost, we destroyed 5 of theirs. The mathematics were simple. We had turned war into an equation, and the Valkyrie were on the losing side. The display showed captured Valkyrie broadcasts. Their news programs showed panic. Their leaders gave speeches trying to rally resistance. But there was fear in those speeches now. Real, genuine fear. They finally understood what they had done, Chen Wei said. By taking our people, by torturing them, by broadcasting it proudly to the galaxy. They had created an enemy that would not stop. Could not stop, because we had learned that there was no authority to appeal to, no justice to be found, no protection except what we provided ourselves. She showed footage of human soldiers finding captive facilities. Humans in cages, some dead, some barely alive. The soldiers' faces showed no emotion as they freed their people, and then systematically destroyed everything around them. We found 127 holding facilities in the first 2 months. We recovered 4,200 humans, out of 50,000 taken. The others were dead or lost in the vastness of Velkari space. Each empty cage made us fight harder, made us less willing to show mercy. The council representatives shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away from the images, but Chen Wei continued, forcing them to witness what they had allowed to happen through their inaction. The Velkari tried to use our people as hostages. They broadcast messages saying they would kill captives if we continued attacking. We sent back a single message. Do what you will. It changes nothing. You are already dead. And we meant it. We had accepted that many of our people were beyond saving. Our goal was no longer rescue. It was prevention, making sure no species would ever suffer this again. The display showed human tactics evolving. Early battles were crude, relying on numbers and willingness to die. But within weeks, humans adapted. They studied Velkari technology from captured ships. They learned. They improved. Humanity's greatest strength is not our weapons or our numbers. It is our ability to learn from our enemies and become better killers. Within 3 months, we were matching Velkari technology. Within 6 months, we were exceeding it in certain areas. She showed a particularly brutal battle over a Velkari core world. Human ships now moved with precision, using tactics the Velkari could not predict. We started using psychological warfare. We would appear in a system, destroy military targets and leave, then return a week later when they thought they were safe, then a month later. We wanted them to live in fear, to know that we were coming but never know when. We wanted them to understand what they had done to our people. Zixtel interrupted. Ambassador, you are describing systematic terrorism. The deliberate targeting of civilian morale. The deliberate protection of future innocence, Chen Wei corrected sharply. Every day the Velkari existed, they could resume harvesting. Every facility left standing was a facility that could be rebuilt. We were not terrorizing them for pleasure. We were teaching the galaxy a lesson. There are consequences for atrocity. You failed to teach that lesson, so we did. The display showed Velkari attempts to surrender, formal diplomatic messages, offers to return all remaining humans, proposals for peace treaties, promises to cease all harvesting forever. Each message was met with silence from humanity. They did not understand, Chen Wei said. They thought this was about our people, about stopping future harvesting, about justice for crimes committed. It was not anymore. It was about eradication, about making sure the Velkari Empire could never threaten anyone again. We had moved past anger into something colder, something more final. She changed the image to show the Galactic Council's response during this time. Emergency sessions, debates about intervention, proposals for peacekeeping forces. You finally decided to act. 6 months after the war began, this council voted to send forces to stop humanity, to enforce a ceasefire, to protect the Velkari from extinction. Chen Wei's smile was cold and humorless. Your fleet arrived in what had been Velkari territory. They found empty systems. We had withdrawn. You thought you had won. You thought you had saved the Velkari. You established a protected zone and told them they were safe, that humanity would not be allowed to continue. The display showed the protected zone, 50 Velkari systems under Galactic Council protection, peacekeeping fleets from a dozen species, defensive installations. It looked impressive, secure. You underestimated us just like they did, Chen Wei said quietly. You thought we would respect Council authority, that we would accept your intervention, that we were still the peaceful species who had begged for your help 2 years earlier. We were not. We had become something you made us become. The images showed what happened next. Human fleets did not attack the protected zone. They went around it. They found every Velkari who had fled beyond the Council's reach and killed them. Every colony outside the protected zone, every refugee ship, every settlement on remote worlds. You protected 50 systems. There were 847 Velkari systems. We destroyed the other 797. We hunted every Velkari who was not under your direct protection, and we killed them. The casualty numbers climbed. Velkari population, 890 billion at the start. After 6 months, 340 billion. After 1 year, 120 billion. Most of those survivors were in your protected zone. Everywhere else, the Velkari were dying. We became more efficient as time passed. We stopped giving evacuation warnings. We stopped differentiating between military and civilian targets. We simply arrived and killed everything we found. Chen Wei showed footage that made several council members turn away. Human soldiers executing Velkari civilians. Entire settlements burned. Children killed alongside adults. You want to judge us? Judge away. We judged ourselves every day. Every night, human soldiers returned to their ships and vomited or cried or sat in silence, trying to reconcile what they had become with who they had been. But they went back out the next day, because the alternative was allowing the Velkari to survive. And we could not allow that. The display showed a particular incident that had become infamous. A human fleet discovered a Velkari civilian transport carrying 50,000 refugees, families fleeing toward the protected zone. The transport was unarmed, defenseless, broadcasting surrender. We destroyed it. Every person aboard died. 50,000 civilians who had nothing to do with the harvesting, who had never harmed anyone, who were simply trying to survive. We killed them all. Silence filled the chamber. The weight of that admission hung in the air like a physical thing. The transport captain sent a final message before they died. Chen Wei continued. We are civilians. We have children aboard. Please. Our fleet commander responded. So did New Providence. Then he gave the order to fire. And 50,000 Velkari died screaming for mercy we would not give, because they had not given mercy to us. She looked around at the assembled species. That commander's name was Admiral Kan Nguyen. He was a botanist before the war, a gentleman who loved gardening and had never raised his voice in anger. After the war, he spent 20 years in therapy trying to live with what he had done. He eventually took his own life. His suicide note said, I became a monster to stop monsters, but monsters is all that remains. The display showed the Velkari population continuing to decline. 18 months into the war, 45 billion left. 21 months, 12 billion. The Galactic Council kept increasing the size of the protected zone, trying to save more Velkari. We let you, because concentrating them made our job easier. We just had to wait for them to venture outside, and they always did. Because they needed resources, needed to search for lost family members, needed to try to rebuild, and whenever they left your protection, we were waiting. Chen Wei showed the galaxy's reaction to humanity's campaign. Trade embargoes, diplomatic isolation, condemnations from every major species. You turned against us, called us war criminals, monsters, genocidal maniacs. And you were right. We were all those things. But we were also the only species willing to do what was necessary. The only species willing to ensure the Velkari could never hurt anyone again. The images showed human society during this time, cities functioning on automated systems. Every adult of fighting age was in the military, children being raised by grandparents and AI systems. We sacrificed everything, our culture, our peace, our innocence, our souls. 3 billion humans participated directly in Velkari deaths. The holographic display showed the protected zone in stark detail. 50 systems, 2 billion Velkari. The combined fleets of 17 species standing guard. It looked impregnable, safe, final. Chen Wei stood silently for a long moment before speaking. The Velkari thought they were saved. The Council thought humanity would finally stop. Both were wrong, because we had learned something during those 23 months of hunting. We had learned that half measures accomplish nothing, that enemies left alive will eventually return, that the only way to ensure safety is complete and total elimination of the threat. The display zoomed in on a small Velkari settlement within the protected zone. Families living in prefabricated housing, children attending schools, markets operating. Normal life, or as close to normal as possible for a species facing extinction. The Velkari survivors tried to rebuild. They formed a provisional government. They reached out to other species trying to establish trade, seeking allies. They believed that under council protection they had a future. They believed wrong. She changed the image to show human activity during this time. Shipyards still operating at maximum capacity. New weapons being developed. Military drills continuing. We did not stop. We did not demobilize. We simply waited, watched, planned. The council believed we had given up. We had not. We were preparing. Sixtal leaned forward. Ambassador, you cannot mean. The protected zones were under council authority. Attacking them would have been an act of war against 17 species simultaneously. 18, Chen Wei corrected. The Thal joined the protective fleet in month 24. And yes, we understood the implications. We did not care. The Velkari had to die. All of them. Allowing even 2 billion to survive meant accepting that someday, somehow, they might return, might begin harvesting again, might take another species' children. We could not allow that possibility to exist. The display showed secret diplomatic cables between council members, growing concerns about humanity's intentions, debates about whether to take preemptive military action against human space. You discussed attacking us. Some species advocated for it strongly. They recognized what we had become and wanted to stop us before we went further. But you hesitated, debated, formed committees to study the issue. She smiled without humor. While you debated, we acted. We spent 6 months analyzing the protected zone defenses, every ship placement, every patrol pattern, every weakness. And we found them. Because no defense is perfect and humans are very good at finding flaws. The images shifted to show what happened next. Month 29 of the war. Human fleets began appearing at the edges of council-protected space. Not attacking, just watching, waiting. We made you nervous. Your fleets reinforced their positions. You sent warnings that any attack would be met with overwhelming force. We said nothing. We just watched. Chen Wei showed communications between Velkari survivors and council forces. Growing panic among the Velkari. They knew humans well enough by now to recognize that the watching was not reconnaissance. It was psychological warfare. The Velkari begged the council to take action, to attack human space preemptively, to end the threat. Some council members agreed, but others argued that humanity had not technically violated the ceasefire. We were just positioning our fleets in neutral space. More debates, more committees, more delays. The display showed a small group of Velkari ships leaving the protected zone, 100,000 Velkari civilians aboard. They ran. A group of survivors who did not trust council protection decided to flee to the far reaches of the galaxy. To hide where humans could not find them. They believed if they scattered, if they hid well enough, they could survive until humanity forgot about them. She changed the image to show human ships pursuing, following the Velkari refugees across thousands of light years. Into dead systems. Around nebulae, through regions of space no one had explored. We followed them. For 3 months we tracked that fleet. They tried everything to lose us. They split into smaller groups. They used advanced cloaking. They hid in asteroid fields and gas giants. None of it worked. Because we had dedicated entire battle groups to hunting down every single Velkari who tried to escape, and we always found them. The display showed the final confrontation. The Velkari refugee fleet trapped against a black hole's event horizon. Human ships closing in. They sent a message. One last plea. They said they had children aboard. Babies born after the war began who had never harmed anyone. They offered to sterilize themselves to ensure their species died out naturally within 1 generation. They offered to accept exile to an uninhabited region under human monitoring. They offered everything they could think of. Chen Wei's voice remained flat, emotionless. Admiral Nguyen responded, "Your offers are irrelevant. Your species harvested ours. You tortured our children. You broadcast their suffering as entertainment. You taught the galaxy that some species are resources. We are teaching a different lesson. Some sins cannot be forgiven." Then he gave the order to fire. The holographic image froze on that moment. Human weapons launching, Velkari ships trying desperately to escape. And then the flash as 100,000 more Velkari died. No survivors. We made certain. We swept the debris field to ensure no escape pods survived. We left nothing alive. And then we sent the combat footage to the council. We wanted you to know we were still hunting, still killing, and that nothing you did could stop us. Zixtal's mandibles clicked in distress. The council convened emergency sessions. We discussed direct military intervention against humanity. The votes were close. But you did nothing, Chenwei finished. Because by then you were afraid. Not just of what we had done to the Velkari, but of what we might do to you. We had gone from peaceful explorers to efficient killers in 2 years. We had destroyed a Tier 2 civilization. We had shown no mercy, no hesitation, no limit to our willingness to commit atrocity. And you realized that if you attacked us, we might do to you what we did to them. The display showed human fleet movements during month 32, massive forces gathering, the largest military deployment in human history. We prepared for the final phase. We were going to attack the protected zones, all 50 systems simultaneously. We were going to fight through your fleets, your defenses, your peacekeeping forces, and we were going to kill every remaining Velkari, even if it meant war with half the galaxy, even if it meant our own extinction, because some things matter more than survival. She showed the battle plans. They were suicide tactics. Human forces would take catastrophic losses. Billions would die. But the simulations showed that eventually, through sheer persistence and willingness to sacrifice, humanity would break through. And once through, the Velkari would die. We accepted that this might end humanity, that other species might unite against us and destroy our worlds in retaliation. We did not care, because the Velkari would die first, and that was what mattered. The display changed to show a small Velkari settlement on a remote moon within the protected zone. 300 individuals, mostly elderly and children. The last survivors of a colony that had tried to remain neutral during the harvesting years. These Velkari had opposed the harvesting, had sheltered refugees from other species, had been outcasts in their own empire. The council thought surely humans would spare them. They were innocent. Chenwei's eyes hardened. We designated them for death along with all the others, because innocence did not matter. Species loyalty mattered. The potential for future harvesting mattered. We were not interested in justice anymore. We wanted extinction, complete, total, final. The images showed the final countdown. Human fleets positioned. Troops prepared for landing. The orders given: kill everything. Spare nothing. When we are done, the word Velkari will refer only to extinct species studied by historians. Begin on my mark. And then, Chenwei said quietly, something unexpected happened. The Velkari made one final choice. One final act that changed everything. The display showed a transmission from the Velkari Provisional Government. The surviving leadership standing together, they sent a message to every species in the galaxy. Not a plea for help, not a condemnation of humanity. A confession? She played the recording. The Velkari leader, an elderly female with tired eyes, spoke in a voice heavy with grief. We are the Velkari. For 40,000 years we committed atrocities. We harvested younger species like animals. We tortured them. We made entertainment from their suffering. We told ourselves it was our right, our culture, our tradition. We were wrong. We were monsters, and humanity is right to end us. The confession continued. Detailed admissions of crimes, lists of species harmed, acknowledgement of every atrocity. We do not ask for mercy. We do not deserve it, but we ask that you understand. Humanity did not become monsters. We made them into what was necessary to stop us. They begged your council for help. You did nothing, so they did everything. If you want to blame someone for humanity's actions, blame us. Blame yourselves for allowing us to continue. Do not blame the species who finally had the courage to stop us. Chenwei paused the recording. Then they made their final choice. All 2 billion Velkari in the protected zones. Every single one. They took a poison that had been distributed secretly,